the fort of the UNFCCC is under siege. When you're under siege, you look out for each other.
Yeah. The expectation would be a coalition of the willing saying that we believe in multilateralism, that the climate change will be solved by all of us together. It means we have to think about what we are going to do for next 30 years. We are not going to solve everything today.
But to also be at the table or even build the tables at which the rules are written.
The more climate vulnerable you are rated the worst.
Yeah.
The cost of capital for that country is very high. These all are perverse way of looking at climate change. I think India is not taking that international leadership that it is capable of taking.
Building on that, you can have efficient plurilateralism.
Because as I said, if the climate becomes more and more unstable, we are not going to develop.
Not investing in climate action is a massive macroeconomic risk.
As I look at things, we have everything to gain. So, Arunabha, CEEW, obviously one of the premier environmental climate think tank in India. Tell us what you are doing, some interesting work that you are doing on climate change.
So CB, first of all, thanks for having me in your program. Always great to chat with you. Good to chat with you on camera as well. See, we approach climate change from a systems lens. So we see climate as part of the economy, not as a separate sort of environmental pillar. One approach for that is to understand what are those pathways for developing our economy and doing it in a lower, periodically lower carbon way. So we do that with our modeling work, etc., and we do it at the national level, at a subnational level, etc. And the other part where we are particularly focused a lot is also protecting the economy, but then lives and livelihoods within the economy from the extremities of changing climate. So the focus on resilience by first mapping out risks in a very deep, hyper-local way, and then building up the systems approach towards resilience, whether it is administrative systems, financial systems, technological interventions, human interventions, etc. Those are kind of the two pillars. But under each of those, then you will get many different things. You will have things around energy transition or industrial decarbonization or on a cleaner form of transport. Or on the resilience side, we can look at water or food and agriculture, or we can look at protecting hard infrastructure. But at least in my mind, I like to keep these two broad lenses in focus.
No, at iFOREST also, we are very clear that we are working for an economic transition. We are not working for environmental transition. If you can transition the economy, the environment will transition.
Correct.
I mean to say, without a green economy, you can't have a green environment.
Correct.
And that's, in fact, we did this, our strategic document recently, and we said, our punchline was economy is environment and environment is economy.
Yes.
If you want a green environment, get a green economy.
Exactly.
And unless until we are looking at it from a complete economic lens, and every part of the economy, how it transitions, how the job will transition, how the technology will transition, we will get only piecemeal answers.
Yes.
So,
and I think CB, on this, both our institutions have tried to take, I would call it whatever, environmentalism 2.0, 3.0, whatever. There's a long history of Indian environmentalism.
Yeah.
But I think it's good that organizations like ours, and of course I'm privileged to work with my colleagues, I've met many of your colleagues. I'm glad we are bringing in those new lenses, right? Because the sectoral tree hugging, will only get us to a certain lens. Yeah. But even on this, in this economic transition, or we call it economic transformation, the energy transition, but economic transformation, but let's play around with the words. But I think you're absolutely spot on. To have a green environment, you want a green economy. But even there's a stepwise change, right? The traditional approach has been, okay, let's clean up the energy system a little bit, clean up the transport system a little bit. When we are thinking about green economy, we are saying actually it goes well beyond this.
Yeah.
the circular economy is also a green economy.
Yeah.
The bioeconomy is also a green economy.
Absolutely.
The nature economy is a green economy. Traditionally, I think there have been also ideological resistance to this, that you shouldn't actually ascribe a monetary value to everything. But valuing something and monetizing something are two different things.
Absolutely.
At least we have to start by valuing it.
And of course, I mean to say, if something has to be monetized, then let's monetize, because then there is an interest.
Yes.
You get private sector.
Yes.
You actually get individual interest.
Correct.
You're a special envoy for climate change this year, and you are looking special envoy for South Asia, right? And Belem is there now, couple of weeks away. What are your expectations? What are you expecting to happen at Belem?
Well, the most important thing I am expecting is that we are able to shine a spotlight on not just the need for implementation, but also where implementation is actually happening. I have often argued that we have tended to focus too much in just bigger and bigger announcements, and I've sometimes tongue-in-cheek said we've made it into a mutual admiration society. So anyone who makes a bigger announcement gets the applause, and then next year you come back and no one asks, what did you do about that announcement last year? And so in order to deflect, you announce something else. And we need to shift that focus. We need to shift the focus on countries, companies, citizens, entities who are actually getting things done. Because see, I see COP30 happening against the backdrop of a world that is under stress, not just a climate that is under stress. Geopolitical stress, geoeconomic stress, inequality between countries, inequality within countries, a fraying social contract between citizen and state, regardless of your form of government. We've got to not just say, we've got to, as you said, inject climate action into the economy against that backdrop. How will we do that when there is a sense of siege, when there is a sense of despair? You can only do that by looking at the next person and see, how are you getting things done? We all suffered from the pandemic. It was sometimes an inequitous time. But what did we do? We also picked up the phone, asked our friends, asked our family, asked other countries, how are you getting it done? I think shining a spotlight on the implementation is going to be extremely important. And the presidency has also argued, or at least articulated, that this is going to be an implementation COP. The other thing in terms of expectation is that if we can have a serious enough, and I would love to hear your views on what you would define as a serious enough focus on resilience. Of course, there's this global goal on adaptation and the indicators, etc., that have to be agreed. But what does that really mean? Is it just agreeing on a list of indicators that you're reporting on? Is it trying to find some additional resources that can invest in our adaptation activities? Or is it a genuine structural systemic pivot towards a focus on resilience? There are other priorities. I don't want to get into the weeds of the negotiations. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
For me, Belem is important from the lens of multilateralism. I think there is an attack on multilateralism from those countries who have enjoyed the benefits of multilateralism in previous 40 years.
Because they set the rules.
Yeah, they set the rules, but now their rules are being challenged. The US of 1992 is not the US of 2025. Okay. It is important to understand that the UNFCCC was signed by a Republican president. Okay. US was the sole superpower then. It wrote the rules. It actually also agreed on some of the rules that developing countries pushed. For example, I'm always surprised that the common but differentiated responsibility was agreed in Rio in 1992. No developed country will agree to that language today. Yeah. So I think there is a need. For me, the expectation would be a coalition of the willing, saying that we believe in multilateralism, that the climate change will be solved by all of us together, that we want to take that a step forward. And I think that sort of, if that sort of message comes, I will be very happy. You are looking at in a much bottom-up fashion that what I am looking at. Okay, I'm looking at it from more geopolitical angle. I'm also looking at the role that emerging economies will do. BRICS, for example, India is going to have BRICS presidency next year. I very strongly believe that UNFCCC and in fact multilateralism, the strengthening of multilateralism will not happen because of US or Europe. It will happen if we are interested in strengthening multilateralism. Okay? So I'm also looking at some sort of strong message from BRICS that they are in it. They want to take a leadership position on climate, that they are not dependent on developed world to take the ambitious action that they want to do on climate. So for me, messaging is going to be very important from Belem. While the focus on implementation is perfectly all right, and you're right, we need to now start talking about implementation and not a new agreement in every COP that happens. But at this point of time, considering the attack on multilateralism, the crisis we are seeing in trade, a strong message from Belem on these will be very important.
I think we are approaching it from different angles, but the end goal is the same. I think we both recognize that multilateralism, and I added a long list of other grievances to it, are under strain. And we have to articulate very clearly why climate action is not something that is being forced upon us. In fact, not only is it in our interest, the reason I talked about implementation is that we are already acting on it.
Yeah.
And we are going to act more on it. This is the fort of the UNFCCC is under siege. And when you are under siege, you might not agree with everybody who's inside and sheltering inside the fort. But when you're under siege, you look out for each other.
Yeah.
And you demonstrate and you say, look, I don't have all the answers. And maybe you don't have all the resources. But we can demonstrate a different type of solidarity. And the world needs solidarity not as a softy point.
Yeah.
It needs solidarity because we're all under siege. And this is an existential challenge. I think we sometimes overplay that this is the last chance to save the planet and etc. And that also sets things up in an awkward fashion, and then you're just kind of massaging headlines. That's not the point. When I say it's an existential challenge, you know this, CB, I know this. It is an existential challenge for farmers on the ground, for a construction laborer working under heat stress, but also an existential challenge for a large business that decides to invest in renewables and then suddenly sees the cost of finance going up or their debt service payments going up, or fiscal room shrinking. So to argue that, when things were good, we were acting because someone was forcing us to act, and things were bad, we are going to stop acting, is obviously not the right message. But arguing it and articulating it from the point of view of, we will show you how it's done under constrained optimization, right? Rather than we will just announce more and more things, is, I think, a way to not give a reality check, but bring authenticity into the conversation.
Also confidence, right?
And confidence based on what you've already done.
Yeah. I'm not a very big fan of UNFCCC because of many reasons. I very strongly believe that putting all the eggs in one basket and the kind of, the overarching issues that we are dealing with on climate change at one platform, UNFCCC, is not a very optimal way to go. I also think that UNFCCC has not been able, there's a trust deficit in that institution.
Absolutely.
There's a trust deficit in that institution. So I have not been a big fan. In fact, in 2019, at the 25th anniversary of UNFCCC, Climate Central asked me to write an article on what should be the future of UNFCCC. The headline was not given by me. Okay, so the editor kept the body text and gave the headline saying the time to end UNFCCC. Okay, and obviously that was not the choice of the headline of mine, but the message that I gave was exactly that if UNFCCC doesn't become relevant, okay, for every one of us, especially vulnerable countries, then maybe countries will start looking at different platforms. Okay? So one of the areas that I want to discuss with you, now that you are in UNFCCC, you are looking at how the institution is working. How do you see reform and the future of UNFCCC itself?
So, in fact, you wrote that article pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. I wrote an article saying that the UNFCCC has to become a bank of actions.
Okay.
And I said, like any bank, there are deposits. The deposits currently in the UNFCCC are commitments.
Okay.
The less you act on your commitments, the value of that deposit goes down. When your deposits lose their value, there's a run on that bank. That's effectively what you're saying.
Yeah.
Instead, if you are depositing actions, what you're getting done, how you're getting it done, how does this institution help you get this done? What it can't get done, other institutions step in, because it is the FCCC itself is not a bank.
Yeah.
The FCCC itself is not a court. Unlike other regimes, the
There's a
FCCC does not
yeah.
have its own kind of enforcement mechanism of the kind that many other regimes have, and therefore, at least for 15 years now, in fact, pre-Copenhagen COP, which was in 2009, there was already conversation around the regime complex of climate change, that there are many different regimes that will pan out. So FCCC has to be kind of, it's like when we're all running this marathon, right? But you got to cross a line every, especially if you're on a loop, you have to cross a line in a periodic way, and that's the line you cross in terms of FCCC. But you're running the marathon based on many other metrics. So I think there has to be a three-step approach to this. And this goes back to what you were saying earlier about economic transition and economic transformation. We have to first focus on what we're getting done at home.
Okay.
And what is the change in our financial systems, in our political systems, in our administrative systems, in our social systems that will enable that transition? Are these just policies and rules? Are there bigger laws, etc.? We also have to get a little more smart about strategic bilateralism. Right? Because the FCCC puts us in different buckets, and these are sealed off buckets almost.
LDC and I don't know.
And then, all these different coalitions that emerge, we need a more variable geometry on this, where we can reach out and have bilateral partnerships on a technology platform, on a finance initiative, on resilience, etc. Building on that, you can have efficient plurilateralism. India has attempted a few things. There's ISA, there is International Solar Alliance, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. There's the Global Biofuels Alliance, etc., etc. But other countries have created. We just published a report looking at about 475 odd different initiatives that have come up just in the last decade.
Okay.
These are not universal.
And bilateral, regional,
plurilateral, etc. Right? These are not out of the negotiations.
Yeah.
They're on the sidelines of the negotiations, which means the world is already acting in a manner that is de facto rather than de jure.
Yeah.
Right? We are trying to get things done and ally with and work with and make friends with whoever can help us get things done. All of those three things can then re-inject the word that you said is missing, trust. Trust is not going to flow top down just because we say, oh, let's trust each other. Trust will flow bottom up. What we do at home, what we do with our bilateral partners, what we do with a coalition of the doing, not just the willing.
No, I think that having relationships, cooperation, agreements outside UNFCCC is actually a great idea. Okay, because I have been talking about sectoral cooperation. Major steel producers coming together.
Correct.
Okay, and having a deal an agreement that the steel sector of the world will reduce emissions. Transport cooperation, transport agreement, shipping. Not all the countries have to come together, because at the end of the day, India, China, plus couple of countries will account for 100%
of steel.
Okay, you don't need 200 odd countries to come together. So one that, and as you rightly said, climate change is not going to be solved by action in next 5 years. It's going to take 30 years for this economic transition, at least if we are looking at 2050 target. So it means we have to think about what we are going to do for next 30 years. We are not going to solve everything today, right? So sectoral agreements between major players, regional cooperation. I mean to say ASEAN and India-ASEAN cooperation, BIMSTEC, similar cooperation in Gulf countries or South America will also be very helpful, because the economic structures are same, climatic condition is same. So one of the work that we are doing at iFOREST is also to think about what will be the new architecture on international climate, apart from UNFCCC and the bilateral and plurilateralism that you are talking about. So that is another area of work which I strongly feel that India should take lead on that. And India has taken lead on ISA and other institutions, but on very strong, concrete industrial sector decarbonization, India should take lead, because I think it is in the interest of the country.
Absolutely. I think, I have argued elsewhere, if we are the second largest steel producer in the world, can we be the largest green steel producer in the world?
Absolutely.
Right? And then there will be shades of that green steel as well.
Yeah.
And that's why India has come out with a taxonomy on green steel. I think you're absolutely right. You can't have decarbonization along with deindustrialization. Decarbonization without deindustrialization. And that requires, again, understanding that this is in our own interest, to not just sort things out at home, but to also be at the table, or even build the tables at which the rules are written. So I think that is certainly the case. But the broader architecture is going to be, I think, overlapping tents. It's not going to be one giant tent into which everything will fit, nor will it be completely discrete tents where each one just chooses. They're going to overlap, and we'll need those sort of passageways between one tent and the next.
Absolutely.
If we lock ourselves into sort of political coalitions that are ossified, then we don't give ourselves the space to experiment with something different.
One of the other area of discussion that is happening at UNFCCC is also in terms of resilience, right? Yes. And finance. How do you see, let's start with finance. How do you see finance going ahead with Baku to Belem roadmap? Our environment minister, by the way, has just written a column on in times of India on finance. Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, finance comes in different colors. What finally matters is what kind of investment flows into your economy for that economic transition or transformation. In order for that investment to happen, you need a combination of public finance, development finance, concessional finance, private finance. The Baku to Belem roadmap is one attempt to outline how 300 billion can get to 1.3 trillion. Actually, the need is even more. 1.3 is just the external finance, but the need is well over $2-3 trillion. So I would say that we have to examine these road maps in plural to see for different types of countries which pathways and which combination of these different types of or colors of money works.
But do you think public finance is something that is going to happen?
The public finance is highly limited. Fiscal space in developing countries has shrunk. In developing countries, in developed countries, they have withdrawn from their ODA commitments, let alone climate finance commitments. that does not mean that public finance cannot be raised. I think we have to also get innovative about how you raise public finance and how you merge different types of public finance also to deliver multiple goals. If you're going to only look at, this was the health budget, and then I have nothing left for education, and then I have nothing left for climate action, then it becomes hard to create more and more budget lines. So we have to be smarter on that in any case, certainly within our own economies. An investment in clean air is an investment in the economy, is an investment in education, and so forth. But internationally also, how do we raise more capital, but from which sources? If the person who's been laid off their steel job, in some developed country, is made to feel as your tax money that is going to go to pay for somebody else who's about to lose their coal job in some other country, then you will have that breakdown of the social contract that I was referring to. But there are many other sources that are not tapped. There are stocks of capital, there's stocks of wealth, there's flows of investment that are not tapped enough. And we have to get a little creative there. And I'm not sure we have thought it through, because we have also, we are working on the assumption that, a form of finance is closed off and therefore all of it is closed off. But I strongly believe that the way to think about it is through the lens of investment rather than just in the lens of grant and how much public finance came in.
For me, grant was always a problematic idea. Even from moral point of view, it's a strong word I'm going to use, but it almost looked like begging bowl. Okay. I very strongly believe that there is enough resources that can be mobilized. As you say, you can say concessional loan, investment, if we keep our house in order. So there are responsibility within development.
This is what I said as internal transformation.
Internal transformation is there. If you can strengthen your economy, you will get investment. There's money to be made in our part of the world.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And in climate change, in doing that. So grant, and therefore at UNFCCC, this again was a problem for me, that whenever there is a discussion on finance, it's all about grant. How much money you are going to give it to me? And which they have never given, and they're not going to give it. And obviously, as you rightly said, a steel worker in Texas, for example, will not give money to coal worker in Dhanbad to switch his job, right? So I think we have to be realistic even from that point of view. But I also feel that there is enough space for reforms in the global financial system itself, like sovereign rating.
Totally agree.
I mean, think about it. The more climate vulnerable you are, you are rated the worst. The cost of capital for that country is very high. Insurance. I mean to say, these all are perverse way of looking at climate change. The financial market, I generally believe, actually victimizes the biggest victims. The interest rate on loan, the cost of insurance, the cost of capital, everything is worst for countries who are most vulnerable to climate change.
We have been at CEEW highlighting the cost of capital for well over a decade. This is the biggest obstacle to the faster rollout, even of mature technologies, let alone technologies that have yet to.
12% interest rate, think about it.
And this is what I meant by different colors of money. Colors of money is not just public versus private finance. It is that now development finance, the reform of the international financial architecture, is contingent on then how are we leveraging the multilateral and regional development banks. If the multilateral and regional development banks are going to give out basic loans, then you're pushing out somebody else who's giving out loans. No, you have to enable a market where many more loans can come in. You have to de-risk that market at a programmatic level. I often hear this. there is no good project that has not got money. That's true. But the world doesn't have time to find individual good project after good project. You have to bet on a program. You said bet on a sector, and I would argue beyond that, bet on a geography. Right? That's how you average out the risks. Some will win, some will lose. If you're willing to do that as a VC, as a venture capitalist, we should be able to do that otherwise. But then you mentioned the other word, resilience. And in the context of finance, I think the lack of insurance cover for the most vulnerable, nearly half of the damages caused by climate extremes every year is uninsured. I think this is the world's biggest market failure.
In our case, it might be 90%.
It is, yes. We brought out a report last year. We said, what we are doing is we are counting the occurrence of an event. And we're counting an immediate damage, livestock loss, etc. The real economic impact is not counted in 60% of the cases for developing countries and 90% of the cases for least developed countries. So who is covering for that?
Oh my God.
Right? This is a market failure of epic proportions.
I mean, to think about Himachal Pradesh this year. I think they are going to have counted loss. I'm not talking about uncounted and long-term losses that has happened to businesses. I think they're going to lose about 2 lakh crore rupees this year.
So who's underwriting that?
None.
Of which balance sheet is that
None.
coming?
And the GDP of Himachal Pradesh is 2.2 lakh crore rupees. So in one extreme monsoon season, you're losing infrastructure, buildings, businesses worth your 1 year GDP. And it's not that it has happened for the first time. Last year also HP was hit.
Yes. So this is what I worry about, that the real market failure, the lack of insurance cover is going to massively compound the fiscal crisis. If we can give 1 year's crop insurance, 2 years farmers' welfare, do it year after year after year, you're going to run out of cash. But this goes back to the bigger systemic point you were making. It's not that capital doesn't. The world's capital is more than world's GDP. But that capital is sitting under metaphorical mattresses. So combating climate change is, yes, an economic transformation. Yes, an investment in our own futures. Yes, a protection of our own vulnerable. Yes, an opportunity to leapfrog. Yes, an opportunity to maintain market access, be the leaders in technology. But it is also a commitment to solidarity.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we have to think about the fundamental of multilateralism should, other than trade where you compete and technology that you develop, in terms of common good, it has to be global solidarity. Let's come back to India a little bit about how do you see India taking up its position on climate at both domestically and internationally. But before that, I just wanted to give you some data because you talked about cost of capital. There's a recent UNEP report, which is a very interesting report. It looked at 25 most vulnerable developing countries. And it estimated that the cost of capital of those countries have gone up by 120 basic points because of climate change. 1.2% higher interest rate they are paying, and their extra money that they are going to pay to the lenders is going to be about $40 billion. So the other side of the story is, instead of money coming from developed countries to developing countries on climate change, actually there is an outflow, money going from developing countries to the developed world.
You remember when we used to talk about money lenders?
And
their rapacious practices, squeezing more money out of the poor.
That is also happening. But let's come back to India. How do you see things developing in India?
See, I think, again, this is work that you have done at iFOREST, we have done at CEEW, other institutions have done. I think we are all committed to the development of India in an ecologically sustainable way. And I think you would agree with me, in a socially just way as well.
Absolutely.
And in that regard, I think we have made some significant progress and we have to make a lot more progress. We have kind of grabbed the low-hanging fruit. Just over the last 15 years, say, we've managed to go from nothing in solar to significant investment in solar capacity and wind capacity. Overall, over 50% of capacity. But both of us know this is generation that matters. So I think by 2030 we can be upwards of 40% of generation as well from clean energy sources. I think the energy efficiency story has also played out in a democratic way, in the sense that it's not just energy efficiency of large industries. It's also about our light bulbs. It is also about MSMEs, etc. And I think that is a harder battle to fight, and we must continue investing there. I think we are beginning to make some progress on the transportation story with EVs, but again, I think both of us would agree that a lot more focus is needed on public transport, which is clean, so that we live in cities that have good quality of life, not just because we want to save the planet. I think we are beginning to see the potential in more sustainable agricultural practices, even though we don't like to make international promises on agriculture. I think we are seeing our soils, human civilization is resting on a thin layer of soil.
2 meters, so exactly. At times 1 meter.
So investing in our soils, investing in recharging our water systems, these are all towards that larger, as you said, a green economy is also leading to a green environment. I think we need to say this story a little bit more confidently at international platforms. I think that's where there's a disconnect between what we're doing ourselves a disservice when we make position or articulate positions of principle without pairing it with the examples of practice.
In fact, the disconnect between our commitment internationally and what we are doing domestically is immense. Think about the commitment we have made in NDC. Yes. We are going to do at least double of that domestically. Double. That's our domestic law. I mean to say,
exactly.
Think about it, renewable purchase obligation.
Exactly.
We are saying we'll get 43% electricity from renewable by 2030.
Correct.
And internationally, we don't want to make that commitment. Okay. Domestically, we are saying we'll get 30% EV. Internationally, we don't want to talk about.
We have not even said anything about
EV. Okay. So I think this disconnect, and that's where I think India is not taking that international leadership that it is capable of taking. India is always reacting. I mean to say, it's almost like pari passu. You move first and then I'm going to move next. That need not be the case. What really worries me that India is going to develop in a phase of unstable climate. And history shows us that countries develop when they have stable climatic conditions. Europe development happened post Little Ice Age. The 100 years that Europe got for Industrial Revolution had a very strong climatic reason. It warmed.
The Jared Diamond's book collapse.
Yeah. So, and we are growing when we are going to face more and more unstable climate. That is the story to be told.
There's a story to tell externally, and there is a story to tell
internally. Yeah.
The story to tell externally is what are we already doing, regardless of what commitments we have made. I think the decision, what commitment you make or not, there are various different factors come in. I don't want to get into that. I'm not a negotiator, so let the negotiators and let the government decide. But that should not stop us from saying whether I've made a commitment or not. I still want to tell you my story.
That I'm doing this.
I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I'm not doing only X. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I'm thinking about A, B, and C. And I'm partnering with, M and O. That is a story we have to tell. Internally is this thing about vulnerability. Vulnerability is no longer just early warning systems to protect lives. Vulnerability is that if we truly care about poverty alleviation and beyond poverty alleviation, development, aspiration, meeting the aspirations of, this huge population that's under the age of 25, investing in climate action is a macroeconomic play. Not investing in climate action is a massive macroeconomic risk.
But I want to pick up what I said. Why I'm saying is that it is an interest of India to have a very strong global action. In fact, it is in the interest of developing countries, all of them. Because as I said, if the climate becomes more and more unstable, we are not going to develop. If suppose states are going to lose, infrastructure and industries equivalent to their GDP, we are not developing them. So while the story domestically, absolutely, we need to talk about internationally what we are doing and domestically what the story of the benefit of taking climate action. But I think India also has to start thinking carefully what role it has internationally.
Yes, and that role goes beyond the current circumstances.
Yes.
That role, we should be focused on near-term risks. This instability that you're talking about, the tipping points, the near-term tipping points, what that does in terms of monsoon patterns, what that does for heat stress. We need to articulate how do we defend ourselves and the world at a time when we have breached 1.5.
Last year, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it is almost like, again, to take the pandemic metaphor, it's like we are living in the lab that has discovered the virus that's going to spread across. And it's incumbent on us to demonstrate both the solidarity as well as the action to combat this severe crisis that's coming our way. And in some ways, we are already in it. And that is again where, what I said, this fort that is under siege, we need to say we might not have all the answers, but we would like to huddle together to form the phalanx that beats this. And how we beat it, we don't know. We will have extreme suffering, but we've truly got to internalize this kind of la-la land world where the economy will keep growing as if the climatic system is separate. I heard this recently. The economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of nature.
Ah, that's nice.
So I think one of the things we can do is demonstrate that we are willing to work with others to try and find solutions. We don't have all the answers, but we have a lot of track record to demonstrate that we are committed and we're sincere in our commitments.
And as I said, we need to also speak about it with some confidence internationally.
Yes, that's what I mean. We need to convey that. We need to
Yeah.
convey that internationally, that we not only are we sincere in commitments made in the past, but we are sincere about this approach about solidarity.
You know, someone told me that to be a big power, you have to speak and behave like a big power.
I think even when we were a small power, we had spoken like a big power. I think our record of pursuing and pushing for decolonization across the world is something we should be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is exactly, and even in climate.
Yeah.
Even in climate, what we have done of simultaneously demonstrating energy access or delivering energy access and demonstrating commitment towards clean energy is not that any other major economy has done in the past. So why shouldn't we talk about it confidently?
No, I mean to say we have track record, and it is in our interest that, in fact, as I look at things, we have everything to gain if we play it right. We can build a modern 21st century industry which is green. We can provide jobs. Think about the population we have. I mean, the job is something which always worries me.
Exactly.
A job and employment and livelihood, something that you always talk about. It's something which worries me because we are a young population. Okay. The largest number of millennials in the world is in India right now. How do we get this job in the world of decarbonization, AI? I mean to say, the things that is going to play in terms of job market is going to be mind-boggling. So I think we have everything to gain if we play it right, play it confidently, and think about creative destruction. The terminology that the latest Nobel winners in economics have talked about. there will be creative destruction in India. Whether there's a destruction of coal economy or fossil fuel based industries, but creatively. We talk about just transition all the time. How do we do it in a way that there is an element of justice, there is an element of equity, and of course there is an element of innovation and technological transformation that should happen.
I think we sometimes discount the agency of our own people.
Absolutely.
And the resilience of our own people. And if we just trusted our societal resilience more, I think we can leapfrog even higher and further.
Dr. Mashelkar says pole vault. He keeps saying, don't use the word leapfrog. Let's pole vault.
Yeah, let's pole vault, leapfrog, jump, whatever it is. But the reason for this is, and this is not just again some feel good. Our social security is our societal security.
Yep.
Right? We haven't yet. We have a pretty large welfare state, but compared to the allocations, per capita allocations that go to in developed countries is different. And in fact, in developed countries, it's a post-Second World War social welfare state evolution. In ours, it's the societal resilience is somewhat independent of how the state structures have changed over the centuries. We've got to trust that. And a big transformation is coming and a disruption is coming. But the reason disruptions feel a little odd is because of the in the pure economistic way in which we have thought about disruptions, that some will win, some will lose, and too bad if you're the loser. That is not actually how we have tended to approach disruptions. Disruptions happen because of external stresses. It happens because of environmental stresses. But it is also sort of almost part of your life cycle. You got to trust that, and as you said, if we played it right, then we have only to win.
Good, Arunabha. Thank you very much, and pleasure talking to you. Maybe we should do it next time on some specific topic.
Take a technical topic and bore your viewers a lot more.
That's something, and maybe some interesting topic as well. Okay.
Sure.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Okay. Take care.